was a very emerging time in this region, in every sense of the word. I mean, businesses were being created because in the old system, there were no private businesses really. Lending was quite new, I imagine, Albert, because people were not used to having debt, at least personal lending. And as our clients grew and struggled with all these issues that they had in international lending, and they need to have verification from international audit firms, we grew with them. I mean, we helped them along the way, but and they also helped us in developing our practice.
So I'll say, just throw in a bit here and now when we talk about developing our practice, and we have people, people are what get the work done. Our practice today, we have separate departments in advisory. You have deals, you have consulting, M&A, we have PLS, tax and legal, we have EU services, and of course we have assurance, which is no longer just audit. There's capital markets activities, there's PwC Academy, we have a number of other things. We have risk assurance services. Back in the day, Tanya, remember, what did we do when we were?
We did audit, the due diligence, because that was a time when international investors were looking to invest. And some of our even key clients today, for example, Lukšić Group, started way back when they were purchasing Karlovačka Pivovara and subsequently the hotel groups.
But the thing was,
we had easy work. It was very basic stuff. It wasn't anything science fiction. I mean, there's no capital raising because these companies were not prepared, to get a bank loan. Never mind, to have an IPO.
But in terms of having separate departments, I recall doing 1 week I'm doing an audit, next week we're doing due diligence.
We did everything.
We did a bit of everything.
We did our own typing. We did our own printing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was in a lot of ways improvisation. I mean, we didn't compromise on quality, but it was a lot of time put in on things today that we take for granted, with the technology being today what it is, and we certainly didn't have that in the old days.
Yeah, so now we have Wi-Fi everywhere. Before we were pulling out sockets and putting in our computer,
I mean, it was all over the place.
LAN cords, just to try to get a Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah, now, looking back, and then it was frustrating. Very frustrating because you had a deadline, you had to get things out, but and you just couldn't do it. You couldn't figure out the technology. Now it looks funny, but at that time it was very stressful. Yeah.
I remember the time when I started, nobody had a computer, or very few people had a computer. There was Frane, he had a computer on his desk, which I think he never used.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
but he had one because one had to have a computer. Yeah. But most of the other people didn't have a computer at the time, and we had to go through major expenditures to buy computers for all the staff. So
yeah, that's a big expense today, and they're very disposable these days, right? So you're constantly changing. Yeah, but back then I recall getting my first computer and first mobile phone actually as well at the time.
My gosh, those Nokia things, huh?
Yeah, whatever they were. Yeah, Nokia. Give them a plug, but
I think I still have mine.
Okay, we can work on that. We'll figure something out. Yeah, but that was a different time in that respect, and that kind of, I think, impacted how we did business. And the point I wanted to make was, you talked about our first clients, and you were involved initially in acquiring some of our first major clients, some of which are still around today. Yes. And you mentioned Lukšić Group, but prior to that, there was also Atlantic Grupa. There's Adris Grupa, which is still a client today. Yeah. These are,
we had big clients like HEP for a long time, Dalekovod.
Yeah. But how was, you described from your point of view, how was that process in terms of acquiring those clients? What did we do?
Well, it was much more personal, I think, than it is today. The levels, it was relationship building. You went out and did a pitch, let's say, but it was followed up by a number of lunches and discussions, and on a coffee level, idemo na kavicu, that kind of situation, which I think, to me, it's a lot more heartwarming, and I like it better than the way things are done today, where it's more clinical, I would say. But relationships were still important, very much important today. But at that point, they needed you. And being a foreigner who understood their language, who understood their culture, they innately had a trust in me. So that was my big selling point, I would say. I knew their language. I didn't say, oh, we used to do it this way in Canada. You had to be polite enough to say, this is this country, this is the way they do it. This is the current times. let's work through all the issues together. So I think that's basically how it worked, Johnny. And I think we were fair to our clients all along the way. I mean, of course you had issues with every one of them so many times back.
I think, Tanya, the one thing that maybe you're being modest about, but it's yeah, that's, you know, you didn't say that's how we did in Canada, but one thing we did do in Canada, we were very honest, right? This is what we learned growing up there, and I have to say, Albert, I'm sure you have a similar history, but, and I'm not saying people are dishonest here, but, you know, they were maybe at times surprised by this because we were, you know, very open and transparent about what we're trying to do. And I can say that from my perspective, because I'm still here, that a lot of relationships still exist today just because of the fact that there's trust. And that trust was created by these initial relationships, delivering on our promises, delivering or fighting to get things done, and you know, meeting the very tough deadlines, taking responsibility and accountability, but being very open and honest, which is part of our sort of culture where we grew up.
And remember, guys, it was always a juggling game. I mean, we had, you know, we had to deal with somebody outside. At least Johnny, you and I, before we were partners, we had to deal with somebody signing off in another country, who came in at the very last minute to the client. So you were the filter. You had to deal with everything here and make sure it was all okay for the person who was going to review that.